Hello everyone, and welcome to another week of lifespan development. This week we're going to be focusing on early adulthood, which is about from the end of adolescence, so it can be anywhere from 18 to 20 to the beginning of middle age, somewhere in your 30s. Before I get into all of that though, I'm going to answer some of your questions from last week. Starting with class questions. There were only 3 class questions this week, so those are: when is the final exam? The final exam will be online and it will be available for 72 hours from December 2nd through December 4th. So you'll have 72 hours. It shouldn't take you that long. It should only take you like an hour or 2. So don't worry about it. But yeah, it'll be available for 72 hours from December 2nd through December 4th. How many sources do we need to use for our lifespan case study? You only need to use 2 sources if you follow the rubric. So you need to use your textbook and you need to use your biography that you chose, that I helped you choose. Other than that, you are not required to use any sources. If you would like to use additional sources, you are more than welcome to. Just make sure that they are scholarly sources, academic sources, not just a random website on the internet. When are the peer reviews going to be? The peer reviews are, because of course we extended how long we were working on our drafts, so that means I have to move when the peer reviews are. So the peer reviews are going to be the week of November 16th. And that's going to be instead of like our regular discussion activity. On to the content questions. So now we're going to move on to the content questions, starting with: is it possible to have high self-esteem but low self-concept? So this is an important thing. Self-concept isn't really something that you can have high or low of, because self-concept is just how you define yourself. So it's your self-image, your ideal self, and your self-esteem all wrapped up into one. So your self-image is, your concrete things. I have red hair, I am in my 30s, I am a professor, that kind of thing. Whereas ideal self is who you want to be. What do you want to do with your life? What goals do you have? And then self-esteem is what you think of yourself. And then self-concept is all of these put together. How you define yourself, what you think of yourself, all of this all wrapped up into one. So you don't have high self-concept or low self-concept, you just have a self-concept, which can be impacted on whether or not you have high or low self-esteem. So whether or not you think you are a good, worthy person or a bad, unworthy person. But your self-concept isn't high or low. Women are born with all of the ova they will ever have in their life. Is that also the case for men? Are they born with the same amount of sperm as they will have in their lifetime? No. So men, after they have reached puberty and they start producing sperm, continue to produce sperm throughout their lives, and they produce new sperm on a regular basis. So no, you aren't born with all of the sperm that you're ever going to have. Does dating violence have a link or connection to parenting styles? I don't think so. I'll premise this with, I have not done the research, but I've never seen anything linking dating violence with your parents' parenting style. That said, I have seen, I do know that there's a cycle of abuse. So if your parents are abusing you, you are probably more likely to abuse a partner or your own child. That's different than parenting styles though. None of the parenting styles we learned about are inherently abusive. Now, some parenting styles may be more prone to abuse situations than others, but the actual parenting style is not abusive. So no, I don't think a parenting style is going to correlate with you beating whoever you are with. Does everyone reach identity achievement, or can they end up in an everlasting state of not being sure who they really are? Oh, they can absolutely end up in an everlasting state of not really knowing who they are. It's not as common, but it can happen. So you don't have to achieve an identity, and there's no rush. So that's important to know. There's no you don't have to know exactly who you are as soon as you end adolescence. Identity achievement can easily go into early adulthood, and this is something that was discussed briefly in the textbook. And even further is not necessarily unhealthy. It's good to explore yourself. It's good to not necessarily know who you are at this stage. It's really only once you end up in middle age that one would expect that you know who you are and you have an identity. But yeah, it's not, it is possible to not know who you are, but it's rare. Do only rich people have access to boarding schools? Rich people have easier access to boarding schools, but lots of boarding schools do have scholarships, and it's really common for boarding schools to have scholarship students and for less well-off students to be there at the boarding school. But it is true that these boarding schools are paid for by tuition, mostly from wealthier parents. And especially in the United States, boarding schools are very, very expensive. In other countries with other educational systems, boarding schools are a lot more affordable, and they're a lot more common for students of many different socioeconomic statuses. So that is it for all of the questions that I'm going to answer this week. But if you want to skip over to the next slide, I'm going to be going over last week's homework questions.